video games are bleeding into reality. What is the plan for a third Trump term? And Grokpedia is live, giving millions of students somewhere new to plagiarize from. That and more on this week's America Uncovered headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. First, I just want to say thank you all for leaving an American flag emoji in the comments. It's been a huge help with engagement and YouTube's algorithm, a digital beast that can only be appeased by human sacrifice or engagement. So keep the latter coming. The latter. In an update to the episode I did covering the government shutdown, the government is still shut down. I'm starting to sound like a broken record. Specifically, breaking the record for the longest amount of time the government has been shut down in U.S. history. Because if this shutdown lasts just a few more days, it'll surpass the current record of the 34-day shutdown held during Donald Trump's first term. As you can see by this tweet, he refused to blink back then too. Maybe it's not the best idea to get into a staring contest with a guy who stares at the sun for fun. Between this shutdown, a potentially weakening labor market, inflation, and growing debt, American consumer stress is at its highest level since March 2020, which is probably significant for some reason, but my PTSD response to that time period is to completely repress the memory. On top of that, there are millions of people who could lose SNAP food stamp benefits as this drags on. Stay tuned for a future episode on that because right now things are still pretty up in the air. But with all this doom and gloom, we could really use some good news. Unfortunately, like manna springing up from the desert, it came with the announcement that the console wars are over. And thank goodness, if people lose access to bread, at least we'll still have our circuses. Surely the commander in Master Chief will receive the Nobel Peace Prize for overseeing the end of the console wars, assuming he can keep it together. And if you're thinking, but wait, can a president really win a Nobel Peace Prize even if they didn't actually do anything to earn it? Yes. Thanks, Obama. At the very least, I hope Trump can get an Xbox achievement for this. Now, if that wasn't strange enough, Marty O'Donnell, the guy who composes the Halo soundtrack, is running for Congress against Susie Lee, a Democratic congressman from Nevada. And he and the Department of Homeland Security are talking about destroying the flood. Though some have pointed out this isn't the best analogy since in the game, the flood was defeated thanks to a coalition with aliens. Like I said, we're in the silly-goosiest of timelines. What's next? Is the guy who did the sprite work for Street Fighter II gonna run for Senate and talk about his plans to defeat the dumping of Chinese electric cars? Speaking of President Trump, who I assure you is in this picture, he's hard to find, but he's the one all the way to the right. You can tell by comparing it to his presidential portrait. Many people are still worried about Trump running for a third term. Him selling Trump 2028 hats isn't helping. Even if it is just a joke, I don't think Republicans would have been laughing if Obama was selling officially licensed "I'm coming for your guns" crop tops. Adding fuel to this fire is Steve Bannon, former White House strategist, and what would happen if Ron White's liver became a real boy, saying this.
Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28.
Yep, there's a plan, a secret plan that no one can see. Surely no one would take this seriously, is what I'd be saying, if it weren't for CNN telling us exactly why we should all take it seriously. Funny enough, so CNN can keep fear-mongering and raking more views and ad revenue isn't their number one reason. So much for honesty in the media. The 22nd Amendment bars anyone from running for a third presidential term. But a loophole many have pointed out is that Trump could run as current Vice President J.D. Vance's VP pick, then have Vance resign and let Trump assume office for a third term that way. Which would be a complete slap in the face to Kamala Harris, who was hoping to become president that way since winning elections clearly isn't her thing. However, Trump says that while he hasn't ruled out a third term, he wouldn't do it this way.
No, you'd be allowed to do that, but I wouldn't do it. I think it's too cute. Yeah, I would rule that out because it's too cute. I think the people wouldn't like that. It's too cute. It wouldn't be right.
Considering how long, drawn out, and brutal presidential elections have been, I'd honestly welcome a little more cute into the campaigns. Corgi versus Maltese 2028. But Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, threw some water on the fears of a third Trump term.
I think the president knows, and he and I have talked about the constrictions of the Constitution. As much as so many of the American people lament that, I don't see a way to amend the Constitution because it takes about 10 years to do that, as you all know, to allow all the states to ratify what 2/3 of the House and 3/4 of the states would approve. So I don't see the path for that.
So if Trump knows that, then why does he keep saying he won't rule out running again? Well, it might be to avoid lame duck status so he can get his base more energized and accomplish more of his goals, or perhaps more strategically relevant.
The Trump 2028 cap is one of the most popular that's ever been produced, and he has a good time with that, trolling the Democrats whose hair is on fire about the very prospect.
Yep, so Trump is less of a dictator and more of a trolling carny salesman. It's all just political costumes. Speaking of costumes, the Mad Lad actually did it. He did the meme. And after the break, Biden's auto pen pardons are null and void. Welcome back. Nick Fuentes appeared on Tucker Carlson's show. This was a historic meeting of the minds of people who are often called Nazis by people who are often called terrorists. But both sides can at least agree on not liking Israel. Full disclosure, I'm not a fan of Fuentes. Not because he says things like this.
China would do a better job running our country than we do. Okay, they have concentration camps. That's a joke. That's not real. They have re-education facilities for Uyghurs.
Or this.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. They are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty.
No, I'm not a fan of Fuentes because he said that last thing while cosplaying as Matt. All that work Matt's done to bring goodwill back to Stash is ruined. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee says that former President Joe Biden's mental decline was so severe towards the end of his presidency that he wasn't running the show, and that his aides didn't know who was operating the auto pen to sign official documents and pardons. As a result, they declared Biden's executive actions signed by AutoPen null and void, which means all the pardons are no longer pardoned and Hunter Biden is going to jail. Well, not so fast. Just because the House Oversight Committee declared them null and void doesn't mean they are. Just because a declaration is made doesn't make it go into effect. If that were the case, then all of Congress would sound like simple Southern country lawyers with how often they'd yell, "I do declare." Attorney General Pam Bondi said her office is now reviewing Biden's pardons signed by the AutoPen. The information is on Bondi's desk. Of course, that means she'll soon give influencers binders full of information everyone already knows. Then, when asked about releasing new information, she'll say she misspoke about what was actually on her desk, then release video footage with a minute missing and say, don't worry about that. Speaking of people not being able to connect, AOL has officially ended its dial-up service, leading countless millennials like myself to think they were still offering dial-up service? This would be like finding out that Hoobastank is still touring. What's that, Shelley? They are? Well, at least one vestige from my youth still exists. But for AOL dial-up, I will send you off with the traditional song of your people. From old technology to new, Grokpedia, Elon Musk's answer to what he calls Wokepedia, is now live. According to the site's header, Grokpedia is an AI-powered, open-source knowledge repository vastly better than Wikipedia. Yes, it actually says right at the top, it's better than Wikipedia, which frankly is a genius marketing tactic. I'm going to start a line of bottled juices and put right on the label, Chapple's better than Snapple. Then underneath the cap, my Chapple fact will be, we're way better than Snapple. The Grokpedia may have wanted to hold off on that claim because it crashed on launch day. Although when it worked, it did host nearly 900,000 AI-generated articles. Musk launched Grokpedia because he says Wikipedia is biased. To be fair, research shows that Wikipedia is prone to neutrality violations caused by bias from its editors, including systemic bias. And I know that because I copied that last sentence word for word from Wikipedia. However, AI just copies things already on the web, and these things are written by people, like Wikipedia. which many Grokpedia articles are adapted from, as shown by a quote at the bottom of many of its pages reading, "The content is adapted from Wikipedia, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 4.0 license." So it's saying it's better than Wikipedia, but wouldn't exist without Wikipedia. This feels less like an alternative and more like a kid yelling, "I'm gonna be better than you ever were, Dad." Well, at least it knows how to cite its sources. But is it less biased? When asked to analyze Grokpedia's page on Wikipedia, Grok admitted to selective bias and cherry-picking evidence. So it's biased, but in a different way than Wikipedia is biased. So at least consumers now have a choice of which reality they want to believe in. But this is just version 0.1. Musk says that by the time it reaches 1.0, it'll be 10 times better, which is at least mathematically accurate. And hopefully it will be less biased, because it's exhausting having to parse through all the propaganda that's out there, ramming us like a car that we have to hit with the Hadouken of truth. What do you think? Leave your comments below with that American flag emoji. And before you go, check out this video chosen by the algorithm, because if you're going to waste your life on YouTube, at least do it with videos curated to your tastes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thank you for watching America Uncovered.